said, what do you mean? He says, well, back once upon a time, there was only one food system in America. And if you wanted to eat, you had to go through that one industrial supermarket. And once upon a time, there was only one way to be a Christian in this country. You had to go to the Catholic Church. And they had a monopoly on how to do it, how to be as faithful a Christian. But then Luther came along, and he nailed the theses up on the church door, and suddenly you had all these alternative denominations coming. You had Lutheranism, you had the Quakers, you had Episcopalians, and the Catholic Church is still there last time I checked. But it's gotten a little smaller, and these other ones have gotten bigger, and people have more choice. And I really think that what we're talking about, to make farmers less dependent on that single buyer, that single monopolistic buyer now, who's dictating prices and offer new alternatives. I think that's how you bring people along. And so it's up to us as consumers to demand these alternatives and to vote with our forks and to understand that, you may have to pay more for a different kind of product. And so I think that's really where it happens. I think that this movement should be regarded by everyone as an opportunity and not a threat. And if you're interested in learning more about it, by the way, there's an interesting booth out there for the food declaration that you might check out. Look at those principles and see if you agree with them or not. But I think you'll find more commonality than you expect.
The beef industry in 1978 felt threatened because the first natural beef product was about to appear in retail stores. And they had a meeting at that time in Denver and said, what are we going to do about this? Because if somebody has some natural beef, then all the rest of beef is artificial. But as we met and talked about the opportunity to allow the consumer to decide what they wanted to buy at the marketplace, bid on our product with your wallet, and as we thought about those small to medium-sized farmers and ranchers hanging on by their toenails, trying to make a living, who might in fact be able to make a living if they could get 20% or 30% more for their products. So beginning in 1978, the beef industry opened their arms and said, there are customers who will not buy and consumers who will not eat conventional beef. So let's offer natural, organic, grass-fed, free range. So has the pork industry, lamb industry, turkey, and chicken industry. Our whole idea in allowing all of these things to prosper and all of these things to be sustainable is item number one, to give people what they want to eat, let them vote on it with their wallet, and secondly, to give some people who could not otherwise compete because they're too small in size an opportunity to do that. Here's where we are in the beef industry. 2008, 98% of all beef sold was conventional. 1.95% of it was natural. 0.2% of it was organic. And 2/3 of that was from other countries. Most of our organic beef is actually being produced in Canada, Uruguay, and Australia. Grass-fed has yet to reach 0.1%. So we want them to thrive, we want them to prosper, we want the people who raise them to be profitable and thus be sustainable.
So let's get at still. We're in the dialogue now. What do we have to do as eaters and people in the marketplace not have it be one or the other? What do we have to do? What kind of discussion and dialogues are we going to have to take forward?
I think what's hard with those numbers is, I'm sure, the price difference between conventional beef and grass and organic was huge. And if you look at organic right now is 3.5% of all food sold in this country. If you look at the category that Earthbound Farm specializes in, which is the tender leaf salad category, which are all the baby greens, spring mixes, baby spinach, which is actually the largest single category now in packaged salads, 45% of those salads are organic. And I think that's because we've been able to get the price point to be, very comparable, and so people are voting with their dollars. Hey, for a few more cents, I want organic. But then when you look at some other items like dried fruit, it's 3.5% because the price is so much different. So I don't know how you are, kind of, there are the hidden costs of conventional farming, there are the costs of cleaning up, the dead zones and dealing with, a lot of problems that consumers don't see when they choose something conventional. Same with conventional meat industry. I mean, there are some environmental issues that people aren't paying for when they do make that choice. And so if you can narrow that a bit, then I think you might see those numbers change.
I think that's a very important point. I mean, there are, what the economists call externalities, and those are not reflected in the cost of conventional meat. And if they were, I mean, grass-fed struggles with a couple things. One is the fact it takes longer to finish an animal on grass, even though the inputs are much less. But it also struggles with the biggest cost of these alternative meat systems is of course getting the animals slaughtered. And we have had so much consolidation in the meat industry. I mean, what do we have? How many packers? 4 packers are slaughtering 84% of the beef right now. And we've had this mass closure of small processing facilities, so that when I talk to a farmer who's doing grass-fed beef, or talk to Joel, it costs Tyson or IBP about $50 to get an animal into a box, and it costs Joel $150 to do the same with his box. This is, this infrastructure is gone. So the government can do things to make that a little more fair and allow people to do alternative meat production in easier time. But make no mistake though, we support, the hand is on the scale for the conventional meat. We permit the use of antibiotics, for example. Now that has a social or public cost we're learning about because we're getting antibiotic-resistant bugs. We don't fully enforce the Clean Air and the Clean Water Act on these places. That even though it's in the law, the EPA simply does not enforce that. And so that's another hand on the scale. So I think one of the things the government can do is take the hand off the scale a little bit, and you'll see these alternatives thrive.
In the time we have left, if we'll look in your crystal ball, move the ball out there 10 years, where do you see agriculture in America 10 years from now? Given the dialogue that you're accustomed to, the research you've done, where is it that we're going, and what hope do we have? Last night, Michael, you said that one of the things that is the bigger issue in the United States is we don't have enough farmers. If we continue a dialogue that is critical of American agriculture and is really hammering away at some of the incentives perhaps that may exist there, and the whole perspective of agriculture is negative, how do we get those farmers to be engaged? And as a university person wanting kids to come into the College of Agriculture, how do we recruit those kids, in that whole balance so we can create farmers of the future?
Well, a couple things. I'm a critic of agriculture, right? Industrial agriculture, and I encourage people to look at these problems in terms of healthcare, in terms of pollution, in terms of expensive public service. But I also am someone who fully understands that the solution to at least 3 of the biggest problems we face as a species, the solutions are in the hands of farmers.